All right, everybody. So in today's video, I wanted to just share very candidly, how I made my first $1 million by the age of 21. I'm now 22. And I just want to tell the story of, really exactly how I did it. So I want to share, what financial vehicles did I attach myself to? How did I spot opportunity? And really what moves did I make that allowed me to do that? Because I think it's, kind of like a flashy thing for a lot of people. They see it as, and very understandably so, they see it as, kind of a big goal to make their first million. But I'll be honest, dude, it really is just a numbers game, a math game. And once you attach yourself to just a decent vehicle, whether it's a service-based business, for me it was online education, for you it could be something else. But once you attach yourself to a vehicle, it just becomes a mathematics problem. So I'll see you in my apartment. So here's how I did it. This is just gonna be very straightforward. I figure, I wanna give advice on this channel that, whether you work with us or not, whether you buy our programs or not, you consider it to be one of your favorite YouTube channels for, making your first million, your first 2 or 3 million, or taking your existing business and scaling it up. So this is really a video completely for the beginners. And what I'm really trying to do is just speak to, the 16, 17-year-old version of myself that needed to hear what I'm going to share. Because, back when I was 16 or 17, really what got me started in entrepreneurship was, I don't have like a sob story really. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have like almost this crazy like come up story. I grew up actually pretty well off. My parents did very well for themselves. But there was one particular season where I was like 17 years old where my family went through just some crazy financial turmoil and we lost our house to a house fire. My dad, he runs actually an Amazon education company, and he had some like legal issues going on a tax level. It turned out his accountant was like taking money from him, and so he had a lot he owed. And then like our dog bit somebody and we were being sued, and like literally like every single possible thing that could go wrong went wrong. And I remember, I didn't have much going for me at the time, so I probably had like $1,500 in the bank, right? And this was from being a photographer. And so I wrote, and my editor, if you want to put a picture just right here, I wrote, a bunch of goals on a whiteboard. So I actually put it on a whiteboard, which, by the way, I still recommend having a whiteboard today. I always have a whiteboard in my work area because it's just good for the next steps and keeping yourself very centered on like what you have to do in order to keep growing. So I got to work. I started getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. Every morning after seeing my dad, and I'll probably tell a story more in depth at some point. Like there's just some really traumatic things that happened to me where, my dad, who's otherwise a pretty solid guy, I saw him really struggling. I saw him at one of his weakest points, to be honest. And I don't even really know how comfortable he would be. I don't know what I can and can't share. So I'm just going to be very honest and say like, I'm lucky and I'm blessed that my parents never needed anything from me. I'm not like the savior of my family by any means. I'm going to be honest there. But I did feel the need, and I'm sure as a man, maybe you can resonate with this need to step up into a role of some level of provision. And if you go to like my Instagram feed, for example, at Trey Cockrum on Instagram, you notice this like stark difference between like a photographer who's taking photos for fun and maybe making a little money here and there, and I'm like taking pictures of couples, like engagement shoots, and my girlfriend at the time and all this stuff. And then like a stark difference where I posted this picture of this whiteboard, and then immediately after following, like I'm like this serious business guy. And it was just because honestly I went through a lot of trauma where, and I've really done a lot of inner work and thought through, why I got started in entrepreneurship. And I realize now that it's because I so desperately desire to know that if I need to, I can create whatever level of wealth I need to prevent anything like this from ever happening to my family. And, it's a backwards story where most people's stories, I grew up poor and I never wanted to see my family. Mine was very different. We always had nice cars, nice house. And, I'm not gonna lie and say like, I had some like, oh, I used to be, I struggled or whatever. No, I actually had like an amazing upbringing. Like my mom and my dad were, they leaned into their roles as man and woman. They feared God, and they raised me with good values. And so I think what happened was, I remember my family going through this time, and particularly seeing my dad in such despair. And to this day, what drives me, and the reason I'm starting with this is because I think everybody's story is very different, and why you're watching this video and why you even desire to make this money is gonna be very different for you. But my core desire to this day is to make my father in particular proud. I mean, that's it. I mean, you know, I desire so desperately for my dad. And now, granted, he's already proud of me, right? He tells me, I'm proud of you, buddy. He'll always call me buddy, right? Maybe I'll have him on the channel at one point. We'll do an interview or something, but he's always been like one of my greatest mentors. It's to make my dad proud, and it's to add to the level of security that my mom and the women in my life can enjoy. And that's always been my desire. Like, you know, now being engaged to my fiance, you know, she's never had, you know, real financial security, where, you know, she grew up in a home where it was very paycheck to paycheck and just kind of the average middle class American lifestyle. And so for her to step into, like, you know, I mean, like this right here is like, and I'll make a video on why I buy these watches, but this is like a $40,000 Rolex. Like, this is weird. For people that don't, you know, like make a lot of money, like why on earth would you buy 40,000? But there's actually a lot of positive financial implication. And, you know, I humble myself because like I didn't think I could do that like 2 years ago even. And that's not my only one. I've got multiple, right? And I've got like, I don't know, I hate to sound arrogant and just boastful, but you need to do that. In order for people to listen to you, they need to know that you actually do well. So anyway, that's really my come up story, right? I remember like waking up from that point on, seeing my dad this week is fun. I remember going back into my mom's room. She called me back into their bedroom when in the rental home that we were in at the time. After jumping from hotel to I've got 4 siblings. So imagine my parents running a business with 4 kids, homeschooling them, and moving from hotel to hotel to hotel to hotel for like 3 months. You know, they couldn't stay on top of their career. All kinds of fires started popping up, and plus the tax. I mean, just so much happened in that season. And I saw my dad at a weak point where my mom calls me back into the back room, and she essentially says, Trey, like, I need you to talk to your dad. Like, I don't know how to help him. Like, he needs like another guy, I guess. And I remember walking back there and I saw my dad like shirtless, sweating, crying. Like, and I'm trying to tell this story with like almost like a glass wall in front of my face, but legitimately this story makes me cry, unless like right now I'm kind of hyped up on caffeine. I just got a workout in, so like, you know, I'm not gonna be so, you know, I don't know. But anyway, and I just, from that moment on, like I felt like, man, I gotta do something. And so I started waking up like 5 a.m. reading a book a week or book every other week. I like got an Audible subscription with like the $1,000 I had in the bank. I spent literally half of it on books, and a lot of those books are still on my bookshelf to today. You know, books on like wealth management and growing your money, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Millionaire Fast Lane, The Lean Startup, some of Russell Brunson's stuff, just like how to make money. And yeah, and so that was my story. And about a year later, I launched an online course. So I was a photographer, as you may know. I launched an online course and on how to be a photographer, which is cool. We've actually got a lot of photographers who now work with us to launch their programs, which is the vehicle that made me my first million. But I launched that course, and like the first day I launched it, I did like $2,000. And that was just like growing my platform on Facebook and Facebook groups, and like kind of growing like a personal brand for myself, and then putting out just some YouTube content. And then I built this platform, and then the day one I made $2,000, and that was like literally more money than I'd ever had in my bank account. And not only was it more money I ever had in my bank account, but it was like in a single day, and I didn't have to fulfill any work. So it just blew my mind. And this is like a year into my journey, keep in mind. So this was not like a quick thing. I had to learn a lot. Now, granted, I'd never taken self-study seriously up until this point. So 17 years old is the first time I like started taking life actually seriously. And so if I'd have started this at like 14, 15, now granted, I had some like entrepreneurial tendencies at that time. Like I had like, played a lot of like Minecraft and like YouTube, and like I had a Minecraft YouTube channel, which I will never, ever, ever release to the public. People have begged me, and I never will. There's no chance. I'm way too embarrassed at that content. And I used to like sell like Minecraft mods. So like, you know, pay me $1 and you can get this mod that will like allow you to make bacon in Minecraft. So I learned how to code Java. So I always had like some small tendencies, but it was never like I need to build a lot of wealth. It was almost like I just don't want to work a normal job, right? I always knew that the internet could create like some streams of income because it's like what my dad did. but I never was like, I need to build wealth. And that's when that kind of clicked. And so I took life extremely seriously. And at the time, I ended a relationship with a girl that very well could have gone on to be my wife, to be very transparent. She's an amazing woman, and she's now engaged. And we actually very recently, she was like, oh, I need some closure because she's moving on. And since I'm engaged as well. And there's a lot of mutual respect, but obviously we're not talking anymore. Just to be very clear, if my fiance is watching this, I've blocked her. I'm never going to talk to her again. But a lot of respect, and because at the time I broke up with her, and she never really understood why, and it was just a tough, like I had to cut out a lot of like friends and family even, and like my siblings started to kind of feel like a sense of rivalry against me even, and it was almost like, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to just be in this situation, just watching it all go down. I need to figure out a way to just like level myself up as a man. And whether we like it or not, you know, men are in large part measured. And if you're a woman watching this, I hope that you can't not relate to this. But I know that being a man, my heart especially goes out to the men in our culture. I know how important it was to feel like I could bring something to the table. And so that's what I did. Yeah, I feel like I'm going in a lot of circles. There's a lot here, and I think I could make a whole 4-hour long video on like some of the stuff that I experienced in that time, and just the level of like, I fell into like a deep depression, to be honest. Like, you know, I went to therapy, and I no longer go to therapy, and I'll share my thoughts on that at some point. I don't think therapy helps me anymore, but at one point I did go to therapy, and the doctor I was working with was like, you realize that you are carrying like more like trauma and more like pain than like any 17, 18, 19-year-old really should, and you've got a lot of healing to do. And I've been doing a lot of that healing, and it's a slow burn, it's a slow process, and it doesn't come quick. And so for those of you who desire to make your first million, you're probably watching this video for some reason, like what I shared, either that, or, and kudos to you, or you just want to make a lot of money, and there's no like deep dark motivate, there's no like dark energy there. It's just like you just want to have like freedom. Either way it is, I want to help you. So let me actually start with a few book recommendations, a few books that have been really helpful for me, and then I'm going to get into 3, and this is kind of how I have this video planned out. I'm going to get into 3 principles that will always serve you. They'll make you your first million, and then they'll make you your next one. Because I've been at like 2.8 million now, I think, something around there total in my career. My first million took 3 years, my next took a year, and now the third is like coming even quicker. So yeah, I'm just gonna share some book recommendations, and then I'm gonna share 3 principles that have helped me make this happen, and just kind of share some action steps. Like if you're just getting started, you know, you're just now growing a business, whether it is like a landscape business, like my brother runs a landscape business, whether it is a photography business, or it's a consulting or coaching business, selling online courses, that's what we help people do. Or it is an agency business where you're selling marketing services or graphic design services, or you are, I mean, there's so many opportunities. You know, the internet has opened up like the market in a way that nothing else ever has. And so I just want to, my first advice is to stop thinking making money is hard, honestly. And because here's the thing, I'll start here. There's a psychological principle called confirmation bias. And it's essentially that whatever you believe to be true, you're constantly looking for evidence that it is true. So if you're watching this video right now and you're a total beginner, and you believe that making money is difficult, and this is one of the beliefs that I had at the start of my journey. So 17, 18, you know, I was getting up early, like I was getting like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I was getting up early, I was reading a book, I was hitting the gym, and all, like doing the work on myself, because like I honestly, I just knew that like my self-discipline wasn't where it needed to be. And so I thought I needed to struggle and toil, and there's some truth to that, but the point of diminishing return on toiling for money is actually fairly quick. Once you have the soft skills, making money is actually really easy. And if you have that belief, you'll find proof of it everywhere. Money is something that in my view, takes about 3 to 4 years of just kind of, you know, working on yourself and figuring out a model, you know, a vehicle for yourself. And then money is just something you can print. And that's a belief that I legitimately have. And because I have that belief, I find evidence of it everywhere, versus the belief being money's hard, money's scarce. Oh, what about taxes? Oh, what about this? Oh, what about managing that? Like, no, money's everywhere, and there's so many ways to make it. And this isn't like prosperity gospel. This isn't like, you know, me like trying to be like the next, like, you know, if you just believe it to be true, like one of those weird gurus. Like there's truth in some of that, and then it also gets really overly spiritual really quick. So anyway, let me start with a few book recommendations. So this is actually one of the first books that I ever read when I was just getting started. So I was just getting started, and I was a 17-year-old kid that had like no clue what he was doing. And I don't really remember where I heard it. No, I do remember where I heard of this. Like everybody else, I tried all the business models like Shopify drop shipping and affiliate marketing and all these, like, in my opinions, kind of scammy business models. But anyway, I saw one of the like leaders in that space reading this book on their like Instagram story, and I was like, I'll pick it up. And so this is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you might be thinking, Trey, there's like that's kind of like a self-help book. How does that help you grow a business? And some of my audience is going to understand the implications of working on yourself first. Some of my audience won't. But this was probably the most important book when I was just getting started, because it helped me understand, okay, like the results I'm going to get on the exterior world and the outside world are going to come from the work that I do on the interior. And not only that, it introduces this concept that a good friend of mine has like really pushed, this idea of like private victories, which is this concept of like whatever you do in private, the victories that you have there, the successes that you have in private, will then fuel the public victories. And so it's basically like knowing what to keep private to yourself. It also talks about, the concept of synergy and how to find, a business model or like a path that kind of aligns with your heart. It also talks about like, how to balance family and how to balance, like not just balance, but harmonize it all. Just a really good book. Like I'm trying to think if there's any specific thing that I picked up, but I can't remember if there's any specific thing. I just remember reading this book and feeling like very enlightened and feeling like I have a lot more ability to create what I want to create at this point. So let me get on to book recommendation number 2. So book recommendation number 2, very classic book recommendation, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is basically a book on, whether you like it or not, the way that we teach making money in our culture at large, tax-funded education systems, public education, and a lot of colleges as well. Unless it's like proper private education, which many colleges even aren't, you're just not gonna learn how to make money. And so Rich Dad Poor Dad basically talks about just the basics of like what it means to like spot opportunity and like how to sell things and like how to properly measure your wealth and what to do with your money when you have it. And this is a really helpful book because, here's the thing, dude. And this isn't me trying to like justify my backstory, but when you grow up in a home where your parents do well for themselves, they're so far ahead of you that even though they're doing well, you still have to learn your own lessons. Like, I kind of feel sometimes like that, like really tasteless, like Donald Trump story of like, my dad gave me a small loan of $1 million. And like, some people hear me saying stuff like this and that's what the category they put me into. But I literally had to like start from scratch and figure out like, okay, so how do I make money? Like, just, so everybody's that way. And this book kind of helped me with that concept. One of my buddies, Jeremy Miller, I'll just drop his name, Jeremy Miller, recommended this to me forever ago, and I read it, and it was super, super helpful because I realized, wow, okay, like, there's a science to making money, there's a science to selling things, and it's just not talked about. And like, the subtitle is like, what the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not, right? And like some of the core idea, like, let me think of like the core ideas that have helped me here. Like this idea on like the rich invent money. They don't earn money. They trade their way into wealth versus like taking wealth. This idea that wealth is actually an infinite source, because wealth really is just two people trading and finding a middle ground. So it's kind of this false belief breaker of like, in order to earn money, you have to find a way to take something from people. And that's just not true. And then the next, like another huge one was like, work to learn, don't work for money. It's like, don't work for money, work to actually grow yourself. I put this thing on my Instagram story today, actually. A lot of people I got a lot of DMs from people saying like, oh, this is a cool insight. But I just said like, work harder on yourself than you do on your work, because, to work on yourself really eliminates the bottlenecks that otherwise would be present, preventing your work from growing. And I believe that every financial vehicle has the opportunity to make you a millionaire. I do genuinely believe that. And I believe that it is you that is the bottleneck. And this book really digs into that. I'll call this a bonus recommendation. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen is like another one of the, like, if you want to work on yourself and like overcome your own limiting thoughts. So I'm going to stop with the personal growth stuff because like I could go on for hours on that. And if you guys want me to make a whole other video, I can do that. but legitimately, like, please, I beg you, listen to me. When I was 17, this is the stuff I was digging up. This is the stuff. I wasn't reading How to Sell, Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. Like, you know, freaking, like, how to build a massive audience online and sell a course to them. I was like, okay, I think this is the wisdom that my parents really passed down to me, was like, you are the maker of your reality. And I think that's, if I have any form of privilege, it is that my parents from a young age were like, you control your mood, you control your thoughts, you control your feelings. There's no outside force that can get you to do anything. Freedom is found behind your eyes, in your own head. Freedom isn't something you need from other people. You can build it yourself, and then you'll find it externally. And I knew these things from a young age, and so I figured, all right, I gotta work on myself, which is why I hit the gym and did all these things, versus just being like, oh, what business do I start? And hustling to like start a business. So anyway, let's get into a few practical book recommendations, and then I'm gonna wrap up with some principles. First, like, actual business book is The E-Myth. The E-Myth is a really solid book by Michael E. Gerber, and you know, these subtitles are really neat. Why most small businesses fail and what to do about it. And the book, it really does answer the question, why does a business fail? And like, how do you avoid failing as a business? Because I think there's this like common saying, like just kind of in our culture in general, it's like, oh, 99% of businesses fail. And that is actually a true statistic. It's like, I think like 90%, I don't know, something like that. It is a true statistic. But it's actually not hard to avoid, and it's honestly because 90% just do it wrong and don't take the time to figure out how to do it right. And some people would say that sounds like arrogant and like, oh, it's not actually recognizing how business works. But like, no, dude, I've been successful every single year in business since I've started, and it's because I look at why small businesses fail, and I don't do those things. As well as that, it kind of talks about like how to elevate yourself in your own company. Like, some people think that like I edit my own YouTube videos, and some people think that like, you know, I run my own, but like I don't do like the day-to-day. I'm at a pretty high level in my own company, and like that gives me leverage to then do the tasks that really matter. And this is a really, really important book on that topic of like, how do you identify those tasks that really matter? Because like one of the reasons small businesses fail is because the leader doesn't take time to ascend himself to a place of power. So how do you do that? This is a really, really good book. The next book recommendation that I have for like beginner business owners is Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen. And this book is basically all the lessons that they learned growing a multiple billion-dollar software startup. You know, things like, for example, things like, sure, you learn from your failures, but really you learn more from your successes. Like, there's this common adage. It's almost like people are like trying to make themselves puff up their chest and make themselves feel better. Like, oh, failure, I'm gonna fail forward. Like, a failure is a failure. And that's a kind of some people would say that's like a dark way of viewing things, but like, if you fail, you fail. Like, you failed. If you fail, you fail. But if you figure out how to do things the right way, that is success, because then you just do more of that. Like, really, scaling a business isn't like, there's nothing complex about it. It's just identifying what works and then just doing more of it. And I know that sounds overly simplified, but business is actually quite simple. It's just been, you know, like perpetuated that it's difficult, but it's just not. It's like really actually pretty simple. And that doesn't mean you don't read all the books and you don't digest all the content, but it does mean that, you know, it's actually a lot more simple than I think people make it out to be. I'm looking for this last book here. Here it is. This was a wonderful book, The Lean Startup. This kind of talks about that concept of like, do more of what works. So Rework kind of talks about it as a principle. This book digs into that. So it talks about like, it says how today's entrepreneurs use continuous innovation to create radically successful businesses. And so the whole idea behind that book is that, you know, as you go throughout your week to week, month to month, year to year business life, you're going to naturally discover things that both work and things that don't work. And so how do you build a self-sustaining infrastructure within your own company and within your own life and within your own business where naturally it gravitates more towards the things that work and pushes away the things that don't? And it's really just a very binary, unemotional way of thinking of like, okay, did this YouTube video work? Oh, it worked, I'm gonna make more like it. Did this YouTube video not work? Didn't work, I'm not gonna make more like it. Did this way of selling my offer work? Okay, I'm just gonna do that more. Did this way of delivering my offer work? I'm just gonna do that more. And vice versa, and getting rid of the negative and leaning into the positive. And also identifying like leverage points in your business. So like, you know, what areas of leverage do you have that you can use? And a lot of beginners don't understand the concept of leverage. They think it's all hard work, but like, I have a team. And you wanna know a secret? Like, this video isn't my idea. Like, this video isn't my idea. I don't run my own ads. You know, I don't build my own phone. Like, I have a team for all these things. So how do you think I do, like, you know, like $100,000 in a month while also being engaged and like planning a wedding and like how would I do that? And it's funny, I'll get DMs from people being like, hey, do you need a funnel builder? I'm like, clearly I'm not making it like obvious that I have like a whole structure underneath me. But anyway, like maybe that's just like a subtle flex. Maybe it's just like my tiny ego being like, I'm bigger than you think I am. But yeah, the lean startup is basically like how to find those leverage points and put them underneath you and build a company that actually sustainably grows itself, essentially. And if you don't have a company and you're a one-man show, which a lot of you are going to be, how you yourself can adopt the habit of, you know, scanning constantly for what works, eliminating all noise, and just going deeper down that rabbit trail over and over and over again until you build a system that's so optimized, you know, 3, 4, 5 years from now that people look at it and they're like, how did you do that? And they think that they can just take one big jump and get there, whereas in reality, for the past, you know, half a decade, you've been just adjusting little things and adjusting little things and tweaking your thinking and tweaking your thinking and tweaking your strategy, just on and on and on and on and on and on aggressively for years. And that's really what builds, you know, your wealth. So this isn't a video on like, you know, obviously this isn't a video on like how to make the million quickly. I don't want you to make your million quickly. Honestly, I'm glad that my first year was as slow as it was. You know, it took me a whole year for me to launch that course and do these things. And granted, I had, I would say, a rough start because I'd really never read a book. I had this belief that I hate reading. Like literally, I remember like in homeschool, like my mom would have me read a book and I'd be like, I'd literally like, and this is gonna sound so weak, but like as like a 12-year-old, I'd be reading a book and I'd just get like emotion. I start freaking crying. Like hated reading because I just felt so capped, right? I didn't see the value in it. And I think to this day, I still hate being told what to do, and I still hate this feeling of like being capped. And I will, like, even today, like the version of being capped me today would be something like, I don't know, like taxes, I guess. Like taxes, yeah. If I don't manage my taxes, well, straight up, I will cry in April, because like, you know, feeling capped is like one of the things. But anyway, back then I felt like reading was that, and so I had like a kind of a tough start because I just never really took the time to like digest information. So anyway, this is some book recommendations. Now I'm going to get on to 3 principles that you can follow to more likely increase your likelihood. More likely increase your likelihood? Is that a word? More increase the likelihood that you'll make your first million, and continue to do so. Because what I don't want for you, my friend, is for you to make your first million and then for the second one to never come. That, in my opinion, is more sad than never making your first million at all. If you make $1 million and then you never make the second one, you've lost more than the person that never tried to make the million. And so you have to understand that by getting started in this game, you are accepting the responsibility of continuous growth. And it is a massive responsibility because the second you slow down, and this is what outside people who aren't in entrepreneurship and aren't in business don't really understand. It's such a game of momentum. It's not just like I can work 6 or 7 hours a day and kind of just like, you know, you can't, there's no schedule. It's really like you're thinking, and are you thinking about how to grow, and are you in that creative headspace, and are you implementing the new ideas constantly? And if you are, you'll keep growing, but if not, you know. So anyway, I don't want you to make your first million and then the second one to never come. So I'm gonna, you know, give you some principles that will ensure that you make your first million, you keep your first million, so keep it, and you use it well, and the second one comes, okay? All right, a little bit of a change of scenery because God forbid I had to grab another book, but I've been going back through this book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. This is another one of the books that I went through. And it's actually got some really, really cool principles that I'm just gonna mirror its principles in lieu of helping you understand that there's nothing really original. There's no new concept that's under the sun. No such thing as originality. Wisdom is bestowed generationally. And you're not going to do anything new when you build your wealth. Yeah, I'm just going to reference a book. And what's funny is that's actually like one of the principles. So I'm just going to skip to that one. Principle number 1 is don't try to be original. You know, you can have something that looks and feels new, but is actually a duplicate of something else that existed at one point. Like even, for example, like Facebook. Like Facebook is just a place, really, if you think about the digital atmosphere, like digital world is kind of just a place. It's a place to put out a message, socialize, whatever. And Facebook is kind of like the modern city, cities have existed for forever. You can go into different groups, different buildings, right? And so really like the concept of Facebook is just digitizing an already existing concept. And same with Amazon, Walmart is basically just Amazon. Amazon just digitized Walmart. And so a lot of these big tech billionaires, really all they did was just digitize an already existing concept. And so the first principle is that there's nothing new, and there's a scripture verse in the Bible, and maybe we could put it up on the screen, I don't know, but there's nothing new under the sun. You will discover no new things, and you have to get comfortable being not a copycat. And I think there's a line between being a copycat and taking something that worked and putting a new spin on it. But in this book, it talks about that. Like, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, for centuries, for thousands of years, men have aspired to build great wealth. And in that time, nothing new has been discovered since the first 100 years of attempting to do so. The internet hasn't really changed anything. And some people think that it has, and I would agree that all it changes is the pace at which you can get a message out there. That's it. But if you don't know what to say, and you don't know how to influence people, and you don't know how to add value to people, and you don't know how to be a leader, then the internet is fundamentally useless to you, because it's just a megaphone. In the same way that a megaphone is useless to somebody who doesn't know how to use their mouth, the internet is useless to somebody that doesn't know how to sell and market and have a good quality business. So that's the first principle, is that there's nothing new. And if you can see the direct ties between different things, then you'll actually uncover a lot of brilliant ideas that will spur you forward. So just understand there's nothing new. The next principle, and this is kind of, again, referencing this book, is keep no less than 10% of what you make. So you should preferably keep like 30 or 40% of what you make, but if you find yourself keeping less than 10% of what you make, you're fundamentally doing something wrong. Because there's this whole idea in entrepreneurship, like reinvest everything, put all your cards on the table. And I agree with that to an extent and to a point. I think the point at which I stop agreeing with that is the point at which you can't sustain your living situation. Like, I myself have always prided myself on having a reasonably comfortable living situation since I've even started entrepreneurship. When I first moved out of my parents' basement, I moved straight into a luxury apartment. It was almost $4,000 a month to live in this apartment. And the reason why was because, there's various reasons why. It's not a very Dave Ramsey move of me, but I needed my image online and as well as my self-image to align with the sort of a business owner that I wanted to become. And did old friends and people that used to know me think like, what the frick are you? Of course they judged me for it, right? But I knew that I needed to have an environment that supported the person I wanted to become, so I got an expensive apartment as well. I wanted to live a lifestyle that kind of felt in line with the sort of a business owner that I wanted to be. And I found that I remember going into like a Rolex store, for example, and just trying on a Rolex and being like, I'm gonna own this. And then, within 2 years I owned it. And I think anybody's capable of doing that. Once you really feel the feeling of that Rolex, or you go shopping for that luxury apartment and you step into it. And I literally did this. I literally remember talking to a leasing agent and going to this beautiful home that was like $4,000 a month rent. And it was just gorgeous. It was like mafia money, it was had this beautiful garden in the back with a fountain, and it was this old Victorian home, and it was just such a dream home for me. And I remember just stepping into this place and being like, I'm gonna own a place like this 100%. So I would encourage you to do that. But anyway, if you're keeping less than 10% of what you make, you're doing something fundamentally wrong, and that's including after tax too. You need to build a sustainable income for yourself, and I think there's nothing selfish about putting your needs first as a business owner and profiting first. Especially when you're a small business owner, you're sub 50 million a year. I honestly consider sub 50 million a year to still be a small business owner, because the business world is so huge. But if you're sub 50 million a year, then pay yourself first, dude. Take home $1 million, take home $2 million. If you're doing $100,000 a year, you should take home $50,000, $60,000. Your minimum income should now be $60 grand a year, minimum. And if you're making less than that, you need to move back in with your parents, build your business back up to a point where it needs to be, and then move back out into the real world where now you can live off $50,000, $60,000 a year, at least minimum, if not $200,000 a year. And some people would say that sounds it's almost entitled of me, but you'll find, here's why this is such a secret, is because your personal living standards are such a motivator. They are. Once you can just get a little materialistic and you can just get a little motivated by your surroundings and what you can own, you'll find that there's such a motivator And even though right now you might be in an environment where you're like, I don't really need anymore. I don't really need, nice watches, a nice car, a nice apartment or whatever. But I found that like when I was just picking up momentum, I just had my first like $5,000 a month. Like the first thing I did is I wrote down 3 goals. I'm like, I want a Jaguar F-Type, which is like a car that I wanted, which I ended up buying. I wanted a Rolex, which now I have multiple Rolexes. And I wanted to do about $20,000 a month, but now I do like way more than that. And so I had these 3 goals. I was like, these are my 3 goals. Materialistic as they may be, they inspire me and they motivate me. And so in order for me to attain those things, I have to keep at least 10%, which at the time I was keeping like 80% of my profits because I was a one-man show. Now I keep about maybe 50%. So moving forward, the final principle that I want to share is plan. Plan clearly and plan precisely. Any element of your future that isn't planned is left to chance. And being a Christian, I've heard it many times, and I grew up Christian, I still am Christian, and I've got a lot of, Christianity is more than just like a title. It is a way of doing life. It's like why I've worked hard to like, wait to have sex until I'm married and all these values. And it's not something that I just do like as a label. It is like I'm legit. I try to pursue God. And anyway, that's probably a whole other video. I've heard it a lot as a Christian, like, oh, man makes his plans, but God ultimately aligns his steps. I completely agree. I agree that you can have all the plans in the world and God may still step in and change them, but that's still no excuse to not plan. And it's funny, like I'll tell like certain people in my life, like I've got this specific plan. I know exactly what I'm going to do over the next 5 years. And they'll always say, remember, Trey, God sometimes steps in and changes. I'm like, I'm aware that he may change my plan, but I don't want to be blind. I don't want to operate blind. I don't want to just move forward just for the sake of moving forward. I want to know exactly where I'm going, why I want to get there, by when I will get there, and the specific steps I need to take in order to get there. So what I mean by this is know exactly what you want your personal income to be after tax. Assume average about a 6% tax per state you're in, and assume about a 30% federal tax. So about 36% of your money will be pretty much lost to the government. So how much money do you want after tax? How much of that do you want to invest, right? And this is, again, starting with your personal motivations. I think, there's this common trend I see in entrepreneurship, like start with a problem to solve. I've found personally that if you start with your own motivations, then finding a problem to solve actually becomes easier because you desire to level up your life. Simple as it may be. And now once your life is leveled up to a point, like I personally don't need a much nicer lifestyle than I have. I could be living in like a really nice, I could spend like $10,000 a month on rent and like live in some crazy pad like in New York or something. I could do all those things, but honestly, like I'm actually quite content. I do think there's a little bit of like an identity crisis because it's like I'm making so much money and then like I kind of live amongst like a bunch of like college students in Indiana, but a lot of my friends like really admire, like in the entrepreneur space, they say like, I admire your ability to like keep your head on straight despite your environment. And I don't know, I actually think I have a pretty good environment. I think I've built a nice little thing for myself. But anyway, I found that if you have personal desires, that those will spur you to action, and action really is identifying problems and solving them for people. So how much money do you want to make? What's your dream lifestyle? What's your dream setup? Get clear on that. Because if you don't get clear on exactly what it costs to have that lifestyle, then you don't know, how much you need to make, which means you can't reverse engineer the actions. So, for example, one of my last uploads was my $10 million plan, how I plan to 10x my business. And in that video, it's pretty clear that the bottleneck really is, in a lot of ways, certain elements of my thinking that have been wrong for a while. And so really in order to sell $10 million worth of my stuff, I've got the system, I've got the team, I've got the process, I've got the products, I've got everything that I need in order to do $10 million. It's really just my thinking. And so in that video, I share the elements of my thinking that have been sort of holding me back. And you can watch that video if you desire to. And so my plan is really, working on those specific elements as well as certain action items that help me, really one of the main things is just getting more attention online. It's just getting more attention and more focus on our brand and telling my story better and being more forward about who I am and what I've been able to build. And so, yeah, doing those things. And obviously there's specific actions, like I now have like a content team that's helping me manage and run YouTube, as well as getting clear on our numbers with advertising and actually changing the way we position our products. And there's specific action items, right? So I have this $10 million goal in mind. I know exactly what I want to do with that $10 million in revenue. And I also, know the timeline upon which I want to get there. So plan clearly and plan concisely. and be willing to introduce into your life the opportunity of failure, because I've found that humans are more motivated by not failing their plan than they are motivated by like the end result of the plan. And so if you have this like clear month by month like strategy for the next 12 months of exactly what you're going to do, and you just get like religious about it. You have accountability partners, you have people in your life that you hold that hold you to that standard. Maybe you share it with a few key loved ones. Don't share it publicly. You don't need to. I do that now because, you know, I think a lot of people are just inspired by it, but I don't need to do that in order for me to do it. Share it with a few key people in your life, in your circle, and just use that as fuel. Like, you know, 3 years from now, will they say, oh, did you execute that plan? And, you know, will you be able to say yes? Or will you like kind of shrink down and be like, no, I didn't do it. I didn't take action. And so build a plan. And if you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what to do next, you know, this is where studying and learning from people and being in the right rooms and, you know, filling your head with good ideas and concepts is actually quite helpful, because, you know, if you don't know what your plan is, then it's probably because you're at like a knowledge gap. So if you know where you want to get, but you don't know how to get there, that's where you know that it's a knowledge cap. And that's why, you know, my YouTube channel exists. That's why people like me exist. And that's what I want to provide for you. So those are my 3 kind of main principles that ensure that you'll continue to grow your wealth. And I know it's not like strategic, like, oh, here's how to build your online audience. And then here's that there's plenty of advice out there like that. And I can give that advice. To be honest, like if all you did was upload to YouTube every other day in the niche that you want to serve for a year, and then you learned how to sell. If you did those 2 things, you'd make your first million pretty quick, because really, if I'm honest with myself, that's pretty much all I did. And that made me my first million. Literally just like posting on YouTube and then learning how to sell stuff. And like, that was it. And granted, did I sell some things at the beginning of my journey that I wasn't sure how to fulfill, and I just kind of figured it out along the way? 100%. But I also wasn't afraid of giving a refund, right? Because I didn't have any bills. I didn't have any bills. I didn't have any specific, like if it didn't work out, I'm just like, yeah, no worries, dude. Like, total experiment, here's your money back, whatever. Now today, you know, we've got pretty clear refund policies with our work and with our coaching, with our programs. It's like, our refund policy today is something like, if you do exactly what we tell you to do, and you can prove that you did what we told you to do, and you saw no results, like tangibly no results. Now, when I say you did what we told you to do, I mean like literally share your screen, show me the stuff, like show me that you did it, you got no results, we'll give you your money back, and we'll continue to work with you until you do get results. Because honestly, if you did what we told you to do and you didn't get results, that's on us. But at the time, it was just basically like, oh, you're not happy? Yeah, here's your money back. Because I didn't want to feel like I was doing anything unethical, and I wanted to have that, you know, clarity of intention and like character in my own head. So yeah, guys, hopefully this video has been helpful. Please take the time to share your takeaways in the comments. This is, you know, I make this YouTube content out of a place of passion in my heart for helping other entrepreneurs and helping other people grow businesses. And I've noticed, like recently, some people have probably noticed, like my brand hasn't really been on point, and it's because I've been like in the background running my business, actually building the products, building the team. You know, like I feel like there's been like 3 stages in my business. Where, like, the first stage is like becoming an influencer. The second stage is like building a good system, and this 3rd stage is like becoming an influencer again, because whether I like it or not, you know, my face is my brand and my name is my brand, and I need to invest in that brand, and I need to invest in it by adding value. And so hopefully this video's been valuable to you, and if it has been, smash the like button, share it with a friend, and leave a comment about your key takeaways. You know, every Friday inside of my program, I have like this 2 to 3 hour long group call, and I love ending it with like, what have been your key takeaways from this call? Because I always just share lessons I'm learning. I help people with specific problems in their businesses. And I'm always like, what are your takeaways? So if you guys in this video would, in the comments, share your key 1 to 3 takeaways, that would do my heart very well. It'd help me know kind of what exactly you appreciated about the content, and you can expect more videos like this very soon. Anyway, see you in the next video, and hope you enjoyed.